This is our protagonist, Yu. One morning upon waking up, he accidentally discovered a lizard on his bed. The lizard introduced itself as Noi and claimed its mission was to protect a princess from an evil sorcerer plotting to destroy the world. Noi requested Yu his help and asked to borrow his strength. Thinking he was hallucinating, Yu threw the lizard out of his house. Shortly after, he noticed his neighbor girl looking at the lizard he had thrown. When Yu returned to his room, he was startled to find the lizard had returned. Aware of Yu's confusion, the lizard asked him to understand the situation. Yu grabbed Noi's tail and asserted that this was his house and, as he hadn't invited Noi in, if Noi had any knightly honor, he should leave. However, Noi began lecturing Yu, prompting him to throw the lizard out again. Later, Yu went to school, still thinking he might be hallucinating. However, Noi reappeared on Yu's shoulder, startling him and causing him to fall off his bike. Noi explained that the two of them were now bound and could not stray far from each other. After class, the teacher asked Yu about his injuries. He realized no one else could see Noi, so he explained that he had hit a lizard in the morning and fallen, and now the lizard was haunting him. While some people distracted the teacher with questions, Yu slipped away. Noi explained that no one could see his form and, if Yu still thought he was insane, he should look at his hand. Yu noticed a ring on his finger and was surprised to discover he could use it to manipulate a certain power. When he experimented with this power, the teacher came looking for him, assuming his fall had also caused delusions. She reminded him not to forget the report deadline. Yu promised to submit it soon and then asked Noi if the ability could control others' bodies. When Noi confirmed, Yu thought the power could be used for mischief and lifted the teacher's skirt to tease her. Realizing what he had done, she tried to chase him down, but he escaped home to read. Noi then explained their two main tasks, finding the princess and protecting the world. Yu refused to help, not wanting to get involved in a fight that wouldn't even be acknowledged and preferring to avoid grandiose tasks like saving the world. As he was just a college student, Noi mentioned there were others who would be his allies, but Yu, recalling his grandfather's advice to avoid making enemies or allies for a peaceful life, decided to leave saving the world to someone else and ignore it all. He went out to buy food while Noi wondered why he was assigned to such a cowardly person. Suddenly, Noi sensed an enemy. Yu was shocked to feel himself stabbed, but as the wound wasn't real, he followed Noi's instructions to flee. They ran to higher ground, where Yu became exhausted and faced the enemy, a mud golem. According to Noi, Yu used his ability to aid his escape as the monster attacked, but the neighbor girl unexpectedly arrived, punching the creature away. Noi realized she was the princess he had been searching for. She introduced herself as Hina and assumed Noi must have caused Yu a lot of confusion. That evening, Noi trained Yu in flying, but just staying afloat briefly was difficult due to the power's reliance on physical strength, meaning Yu needed regular training to grow stronger. Yu doubted he was suited for being a knight, but Noi mentioned that being a knight and saving the world came with rewards. Yu demanded Noi leave and return his peaceful life, but Noi refused, leading Yu to throw him out again. Noi clung to his back. However, even as Yu went out for dinner, unexpectedly, he sensed the unease brought by the creature from earlier that day. Yu then recalled the events of the afternoon, realizing that Hina, despite being a princess, had not yet fully awakened and was unaware of her own nature. Like him, she had also been dragged into this situation. Yu felt as if he had met Hina somewhere before that morning. At that moment, Yu's teacher, Hisame, suddenly rushed over and crashed into him. She turned out to be Hina's older sister and immediately questioned Yu about what he had done to her sister. Hina explained that she was the princess and Yu was some kind of knight, leading Hisame to suspect that Yu had put strange ideas into her sister's head. Later, Yu went out for dinner and was surprised to discover Hina participating in an eating contest at a noodle shop. The next day at school, Yu unexpectedly saw Hina again. She pulled him up to the rooftop and pointed to a massive hammer in the sky, explaining that it was a cookie hammer created by the evil sorcerer to destroy the world. She wanted to borrow Yu's strength. Hina then climbed onto the railing and jumped off, forcing Yu to catch her. She claimed that Yu would always protect her, and in return, she would protect him. She revealed that her reason for wanting to destroy the hammer was because she wanted to destroy the world with her own hands. Somehow, Yuyuhi agreed to serve Hina and began a journey with her. However, Yuyuhi suddenly heard his grandfather's voice, reminding him not to forget the lesson of living in solitude. When Yuyuhi snapped out of it, he found Noi's face right in front of him and promptly threw him away. He then went for a run to build his stamina. At the park, he unexpectedly encountered Hina again. After doing just a few push-ups, Yuyuhi was out of breath, so Hina offered to let him ride on her back. She effortlessly did hundreds of push-ups without tiring. Later, she invited Yuyuhi to her house for a meal. Upon arriving, Yuyuhi asked to use the bathroom, but accidentally entered the room where Hisame was, earning him a scolding. However, as he was Hina's guest, Hisame reluctantly let it slide. They then joined Hina for a meal, where she mentioned that the food was prepared by her sister and questioned why Noi wasn't eating. Noi explained that he drew energy directly from Yuyuhi and didn't need to eat. Yuyuhi mocked Noi, who retorted that he shouldn't ridicule a lizard like him. Yuyuhi realized that he had forgotten what it felt like to be around others for so long. The chains that had tied him to his grandfather reappeared in his mind, a reminder of the psychological shadow he was trying to escape. That night, Yuyuhi resumed his training and managed to float for over 4 seconds, a significant improvement. But he still felt it was insufficient. He worried that if he faced the mud golem again, he would still be powerless. Noi asked if Yuyuhi had any personal aspirations, but Yuyuhi couldn't think of anything, leaving Noi exasperated. Although Yuyuhi was uncertain about his future goals, for now, he wanted to break free from his grandfather's shadow. Later, Yuyuhi met Hina again and asked why she wanted to destroy the world. She replied that she wanted to possess the world, but since it would still exist even if she died, it could never truly be hers. Therefore, she intended to destroy it before the hammer could. Only by doing so would she feel like she owned the entire world. She then invited Yuyuhi to the rooftop, leaped across, and pulled him up, surprising him with her agility. Hina expressed confidence that Yuyuhi would one day be able to soar even higher than her. The next morning, while running, Noi informed Yuyuhi that with his current strength, he couldn't defeat a mud golem. If one chased him, he should try crossing the river to lose it, buying enough time for Hina to arrive. Suddenly, Yuyuhi noticed a mud golem behind him. He scolded Noi for not warning him sooner, but Noi explained that he hadn't sensed any killing intent. The creature crossed the road, forcing Yuyuhi to flee, but it quickly caught up and attacked. Yuyuhi used his powers to dodge and attempted to escape, but the golem ensnared him. Just as he was about to be killed by its blades, Hina appeared on the far side of the river. Hina quickly hurled a car at the monster, but it dodged the attack. However, she leaped across the riverbank and delivered a powerful kick that defeated the creature. The next morning, Yuyuhi went to Hina's house for breakfast again, which slightly annoyed Hisame. Yuyuhi realized that if he didn't take his training seriously, he wouldn't survive. Later, Yuyuhi's uncle called to inform him that his grandfather had been hospitalized and asked him to come visit. His uncle offered to arrange a ticket for him, but Yuyuhi claimed he had to check with his part-time job first. Even though he didn't actually have one, he simply wanted an excuse not to face his grandfather. Yuyuhi then went to the riverbank, deciding to work on his mobility skills since he wasn't ready to fight. He tried using his powers to cross the river, but fell into the water after only a few steps. That evening, Yuyuhi came down with a fever, and Noi, due to their bond, also caught a cold. While resting, Yuyuhi recalled the feeling of being dragged underwater by his grandfather's chains. The next morning, Hina visited Yuyuhi's room. Feeling ashamed of his weakness, he apologized and begged her not to abandon him. Hina reassured him that she had also been frail in the past and encouraged him to visit his grandfather. Yuyuhi then revealed the reason he resented his grandfather. Once, when he brought a friend home, his grandfather chained him up and locked him in the storage shed. His grandfather believed that humanity was the enemy and that friends would eventually betray him, so Yuyuhi was forbidden from forming bonds with others. Yuyuhi feared that returning would bring back memories of those cold chains, but Hina promised to destroy anything that bound or frightened him, urging him not to be afraid. Hisame later visited Yuyuhi as well, deciding to cook a meal for everyone. After recovering, Yuyuhi returned to the riverbank, determined to jump across to the other side. Although Noi expressed concern about him pushing himself too soon, Yuyuhi simply jumped backward and vowed to one day conquer the hammer. The following day, Yuyuhi headed home. Noi reminded him that he could heal his grandfather's illness if he wanted, but Yuyuhi admitted he wished his grandfather would pass away. For 10 years, his grandfather had raised him with 3 principles: enemies will stab you from the front, friends will stab you in the back, and humanity is garbage. Upon arriving home, Noi asked why Yuyuhi was in the living room. Yuyuhi explained that since he started college, his uncle's family had moved in with his grandfather. Noi asked about Yuyuhi's parents, but Yuyuhi's cousin interrupted to invite him to dinner. Afterward, Yuyuhi led Noi to his father's memorial and explained that his father had been a police officer who suddenly went missing. Months later, authorities arrested a smuggler who confessed to killing and burying a police officer on a mountain, and that officer turned out to be Yuyuhi's father. Overcome with grief, his mother also disappeared. Since then, Yuyuhi's grandfather lost faith in humanity and warned him not to follow in his father's footsteps. If Yuyuhi ever disobeyed, his grandfather would chain and lock him up for 3 days. Noi asked what Yuyuhi truly hated: the criminal who killed his father, the mother who abandoned him, or the grandfather who abused him. Yuyuhi replied that he hated the very world that created these circumstances. Noi cautioned that such hatred would only bring him more misery, to which Yuyuhi bitterly admitted he was already deeply unhappy. The next morning, Yuyuhi's cousin took him to meet his grandfather. After leaving them alone, his grandfather approached Yuyuhi and remarked on how much stronger he had become. To Yuyuhi's surprise, his grandfather bowed his head and apologized, admitting he had been wrong to mistreat him. He acknowledged that Yuyuhi might never forgive him. Overwhelmed, Yuyuhi erupted in anger, yelling that a simple bow couldn't erase the past. He stormed out, accusing his grandfather of taking out all his frustrations on him. Yuyuhi, after running away, unexpectedly encountered a mud golem. Noi immediately instructed him to flee up the mountain. After some time being chased, Yuyuhi noticed the golem was slow but realized its stamina was limitless, making endurance a losing game. Fighting back was also futile, as his strength compared to the golem's was like wielding a wooden sword against a tank. The golem suddenly closed the gap and attacked, forcing Yuyuhi to dodge frantically before falling into the water and scrambling back onto the shore. Yuyuhi began losing consciousness but unexpectedly saw Hina. He confessed that he had always tried to escape his grandfather's chains, only to realize he couldn't live without them. Now, he sought Hina's commands to create a new chain for himself. Though he knew it was an illusion, he felt happy to see Hina before dying. However, she motivated him, promising a reward if he survived and urging him to take action. Regaining consciousness, Yuyuhi believed he could win. He grabbed a rock, infused it with power, and managed to slightly injure the golem. Though minimal, it convinced him he could prevail as long as he could deal damage. Cornered at a cliff, with no other option, Yuyuhi jumped. Using his powers to reduce the impact, he landed safely. The mud golem followed, but Yuyuhi used his abilities to force it to crash headfirst into the ground, shattering it. Just as he began celebrating his victory, his cousin called to inform him that his grandfather was in critical condition. Yuyuhi briefly saw his grandfather but left quickly, thinking the 10 years of abuse he endured couldn't be erased by a few months of change. He believed his grandfather never loved him, but Noi suggested that his actions, though warped, still stemmed from love. Reflecting on the happy moments he once shared with his grandfather when his parents were alive, Yuyuhi felt a spark of lingering affection. This led him to ask Noi to save his grandfather. Their contract was then solidified. Returning to the city, Yuyuhi met Hina in his subconscious, where she decided to reward him with a kiss. Just as she was about to, she vanished, leaving Yuyuhi awake and disappointed. Later, during a jog with Hina, they trained together. Yuyuhi managed 50 push-ups, boosting his confidence to fight mud golems more effectively. At that moment, a man approached, introducing himself as Hanjetsu, an ally of justice. A dog named Ludo appeared, and the group realized Hanjetsu was also a knight. Hanjetsu revealed he had been observing them for some time, but hadn't had a chance to meet until now. He excused himself, promising to meet again. At school, Yuyuhi asked Noi if he knew Ludo, but Noi admitted his memories before meeting Yuyuhi were hazy. That afternoon, Yuyuhi mused about Hanjetsu's potential strength, assuming he wasn't particularly powerful. On his way home, Yuyuhi saw Hina, who was suddenly robbed of her wallet by Hanjetsu. Hina retaliated, attacking Hanjetsu, but he dodged effortlessly. Ludo explained that Hanjetsu was a master martial artist, and ordinary techniques wouldn't work on him. Yuyuhi wanted to intervene but couldn't, so he used Ludo as a bargaining chip to make Hanjetsu stop. Hanjetsu paused, only to be promptly kicked away by Hina. Hanjetsu laughed it off, explaining he was merely testing Hina's strength and cautioning her against relying solely on physical power, as it wouldn't always be effective. That evening, Yuyuhi and Hina spoke again in a dream, where Yuyuhi finally received the kiss he had wanted, solidifying his resolve to become a reliable ally for Hina. The next morning, during their jog, Hina blushed, recalling the dream, while Yuyuhi felt genuinely happy. Yuyuhi and Hina later met Hanjetsu again at the park. Hina, still holding a grudge from the previous day, quickly challenged Hanjetsu to a duel. While they sparred, Yuyuhi asked Ludo when he last met Noi. Ludo avoided the question, pointing out that Yuyuhi lacked the eyes of someone who truly wanted to protect the world. This led to an argument and eventually a fight between Yuyuhi and Ludo. After a while, everyone was exhausted except for Hanjetsu. Hanjetsu casually asked Hina if she read any manga, expressing interest in borrowing some. Back at Hina's house, Hanjetsu was startled to meet Hisame, instantly falling in love at first sight. However, Hisame remained unfazed, casually telling Hina to come inside for breakfast. After the meal, Hanjetsu borrowed some manga to take home. Meanwhile, Yuyuhi decided not to reveal their plan to destroy the world to Hanjetsu. Hina didn't care much, as she only needed Yuyuhi as her ally. This made Yuyuhi happy, viewing Hina as angelic. Suddenly, a mud golem appeared near a shop entrance and began chasing Yuyuhi. Despite his efforts to flee, the golem kept closing in and attacking. Hanjetsu arrived unexpectedly, deflecting the golem's strikes and using his power to target its weak points, its eyes. Hanjetsu quickly defeated the creature. Yuyuhi realized Hanjetsu was quite strong and could hinder Hina's plans. His momentary bloodlust was noticed by Hanjetsu, who dismissed it as jealousy and offered to help Yuyuhi train if needed. The next day, during training, Hanjetsu asked Hina for information about Hisame. When she avoided answering, he tried to bribe her with free meal vouchers. He also advised Yuyuhi to start training with him to avoid future dangers. At school, Yuyuhi discovered Hanjetsu had shown up, claiming he was there to clean the campus grounds as a jack of all trades. Hanjetsu used the opportunity to approach Hisame, showering her with compliments, which made Yuyuhi think he sounded like a scammer. After leaving, Hisame recalled that Hanjetsu's younger brother was a year above Yuyuhi but hadn't attended school for a year. Curious, Yuyuhi asked Hanjetsu about it. Hanjetsu explained that his brother had been abroad for some time. Upon hearing Hisame's curiosity about the matter, Hanjetsu immediately ran off to talk to her in person. Yuyuhi realized the best way to deal with Hanjetsu might be using Hisame as bait. However, Noi was annoyed by Yuyuhi's attitude, criticizing him for behaving like a child who destroys what he dislikes. Yuyuhi didn't argue, as he knew it was true. Returning home, Yuyuhi was shocked to find Hanjetsu casually sitting in his house. Ludo even tried marking his territory on Yuyuhi's bookshelf, forcing him to intervene. Hanjetsu suggested they watch anime together, believing it would give Yuyuhi more topics to discuss with Hina. The following day, while visiting Hina's house for breakfast, Yuyuhi and Hanjetsu unexpectedly met the sister's father. Recently returned from a trip, he was initially surprised to see two unfamiliar men but warmly welcomed them after learning they were friends of his daughters. Later that day, Hanjetsu invited Yuyuhi out for drinks, explaining that Hisame wouldn't go unless Yuyuhi joined. Though Yuyuhi agreed, he made it clear he wouldn't drink alcohol. However, during the night out, Yuyuhi ended up drinking enthusiastically despite initially refusing. Their drinking session was observed from nearby by the sister's father, who wanted to see how his daughters handled the outing. During the gathering, Hisame shared that she and her mother had once traveled to France to seek treatment for Hina's illness. 3 years ago, upon hearing that Hina had recovered, Hisame returned to Japan to visit her younger sister. However, as soon as she came back, their father left Hina in her care and disappeared to pursue his passion for writing novels. He only returned home a few times a year. Despite his books selling well, Hisame admitted she had never read any of them. She considered her father an irresponsible person, a sentiment that made him wince as he overheard it from the bar. After a night of drinking, Yuyuhi noticed that Hisame and Hanjetsu were too inebriated to walk, so he called Hina to help him take them home. Their father followed behind, and Hina questioned whether her sister hated their father. Hisami clarified that it wasn't hate, but rather that she couldn't bring herself to respect someone who wandered aimlessly despite his age. Hanjetsu remarked that adults often smile to give children hope about growing up. Yuyuhi then recalled how his father and uncle used to smile all the time. The next morning, Hanjetsu woke up after a dream about his unpleasant past and resolved not to hesitate again in the future. He realized he may have overdone it with drinking the previous night. Around noon, Hina visited Yuyuhi's house to spend time with him. She discovered that Yuyuhi enjoyed reading books written by her father, and Yuyuhi was shocked to realize that Hina's father was the author of his favorite series. Suddenly, Hisame called and asked Yuyuhi to take Hina out somewhere until the evening to help her prepare a surprise. Thinking it was a family-supported date, Yuyuhi asked Hina where she would like to go. Since Hina was hungry, Yuyuhi decided to take her out to eat. The two went to a family restaurant, where Hina ordered food and then excused herself to the restroom. While waiting, Yuyuhi was startled to find Hina's father standing behind him. After a brief exchange of information, Hina's father asked Yuyuhi if he liked Hina. Yuyuhi admitted he had unrequited feelings for her, but he believed Hina only saw him as a friend. Her father explained that girls generally don't view their friends as romantic prospects. He then asked Yuyuhi if he had any career aspirations. Yuyuhi said he didn't have any at the moment, but once dreamed of becoming a police officer. Satisfied with this answer, Hina's father entrusted Yuyuhi to take care of Hina in his stead. Yuyuhi then asked for his autograph, but the father revealed that it was Hina's birthday that evening and invited Yuyuhi to the surprise party. He promised to sign Yuyuhi's books if he attended but warned him not to tell Hina about the surprise. Later, Yuyuhi took Hina to the movies and then to a claw machine arcade. That evening, when they returned home, Hina was overjoyed by the surprise birthday party. She realized that her father's return this time was specifically for her birthday. Later that night, Yuyuhi and Hina went to the rooftop to talk. She confided in him that while she longed to grow up like everyone else, she wouldn't have the opportunity to do so. She revealed that her sudden recovery was due to a spirit queen inhabiting her body and granting her strength. Once the battle ended, she would return to her frail state. That's why she wanted to take the entire world down with her. The next morning, their father left again, entrusting Hanjetsu with guiding Yuyuhi and Hina's development. He said that although Hanjetsu considered himself an ordinary man, he admired how Hanjetsu created a model of heroic justice for others. Before leaving, he gave Hanjetsu 2 movie tickets so he could take Hisame out, much to Hanjetsu's delight as he felt this gesture signaled the father's acceptance of him. That evening, Hanjetsu noticed Yuyuhi seemed reluctant to train under him. Yuyuhi explained that even if he trained with Hanjetsu, it would only be borrowed knowledge. He wanted to discover his own way of controlling his abilities. Hanjetsu then invited Yuyuhi for drinks. On their way home, Hanjetsu asked if Yuyuhi had come up with a name for his technique, but Yuyuhi hadn't given it much thought. Hanjetsu expressed a desire for an escape-focused ability like Yuyuhi's, admitting he understood his limits. While he upheld justice, he wasn't the type to recklessly sacrifice himself to save others. From a young age, his father taught him to prioritize justice, and Hanjetsu naively believed in his father's claim that with enough training, he could even learn to fly. Eventually, he realized how foolish that belief was. Yuyuhi noticed that Hanjetsu believed that being able to fly meant being capable of achieving anything. However, Hanjetsu at least understood the distinction between what was possible and what wasn't, and he committed to doing his best whenever he could. The next day, Yuyuhi reflected on Hanjetsu's words, particularly when he asked if Yuyuhi's current efforts to support Hina were truly his best. This spurred Yuyuhi to seek out Hanjetsu and request training, expressing his desire to become just a little stronger to better support Hina. Yuyuhi also asked Hanjetsu why he had given up on being a hero of justice. Hanjetsu responded that it was because he couldn't fly, but Yuyuhi knew Hanjetsu wouldn't abandon such a path over something so trivial. Hanjetsu then shared a story about a dog he had once considered family. One day, during an outing, Hanjetsu saw a child run into the road, about to be hit by a car. While he hesitated for a moment, the dog did not and ran to save the boy, ultimately sacrificing its life. Hanjetsu blamed himself for his hesitation and believed he was unworthy of being a hero. Hangetsu acknowledged that Hina and Yuyuhi were working on some kind of plan that might turn them into enemies. While he wouldn't inquire further, he urged Yuyuhi to become stronger to be a hero for Hina. Ludo also mentioned that if Yuyuhi could defeat Hangetsu, he would reveal information about Noi's past. Shortly afterward, the group sensed the presence of a mud golem. Suspecting it was waiting for them, they decided to investigate. Hina joined them on their way. When they encountered the golem, it attacked immediately, only to be hurled away by Hangetsu. Hina followed up with a powerful kick, but the golem managed to block it entirely before fleeing. Yuyuhi then suggested splitting up to search for it, opting to pair with Hangetsu. He explained that the golems had consistently targeted him instead of Hina, and this one had even run away upon seeing her, indicating it would likely come after him again. Although Yuyuhi admitted he felt weak and feared he might endanger the group, Hangetsu reassured him that acknowledging his own limitations was the first step to growing stronger. Hangetsu shared that he often dreamed of himself standing as a step blocking Yuyuhi's progress, a sign from his instincts that Yuyuhi would eventually surpass him. Hangetsu resolved to train Yuyuhi rigorously from that moment onward. During the search, the golem targeted Yuyuhi again, but he managed to dodge its attack. It then began moving evasively to avoid Hangetsu's strikes, eventually lunging when Yuyuhi tripped. Hangetsu intervened, pushing Yuyuhi out of harm's way but taking a devastating blow himself. He fell down a hill and lay gravely injured, entrusting Ludo with fulfilling his final wish. Before disappearing, Hangetsu managed to utter a few words to Yuyuhi, leaving him in shock. Moments later, Hina arrived and obliterated the golem with a single punch, causing part of the mountain to collapse. The incident was broadcast on the news, along with the announcement of Hangetsu's passing. In the days that followed, Hina threw herself into intense training, frequently mentioning Hangetsu. Hisame, meanwhile, visited Yuyuhi to talk. She admitted she might have had feelings for Hangetsu, as she was on the verge of tears upon hearing about his death. Believing Yuyuhi was also grieving, she offered him a comforting hug. Yuyuhi accepted but couldn't resist groping her, prompting Hisame to shove him away. Despite this, the two managed to share a laugh afterward. Though Hisame cried, she forced a smile to show she was trying to act mature. As Yuyuhi returned home, Noi encouraged him to cry if he needed to. Yuyuhi reflected that, while he had once wished for Hangetsu to disappear, he no longer felt that way. Suddenly, someone appeared behind him, introducing himself as Mikazuki, Hangetsu's younger brother and a knight of the Chromu. Mikazuki wanted to duel Yuyuhi, but when Yuyuhi declined, Mikazuki ran off in tears. The next morning, Yuyuhi visited the sister's house for breakfast and found Mikazuki there. He had come to return the manga Hangetsu had borrowed and even ate the portion of food Hisame had prepared for Yuyuhi. At school, Yuyuhi was surprised to find out that Mikazuki was not only in the same class as him, but was also well liked by many of their peers. Later, Yuyuhi had the chance to sit down and talk with Mikazuki. Despite Hangetsu's death, Mikazuki didn't seem overly sorrowful. He assured Yuyuhi that Hangetsu's death wasn't his fault, reasoning that Hangetsu was only human. Mikazuki urged Yuyuhi not to dwell on Hangetsu's passing, as their mission to protect the princess and the world remained. Mikazuki then invited Yuyuhi to play catch, which turned out to be an excuse to spar. When Yuyuhi showed no interest, Mikazuki mocked him for being too weak to protect the princess, provoking Yuyuhi into fighting back. During their fight, Yuyuhi admitted that Hangetsu died shielding him. Mikazuki, upon hearing this, resolved to defeat Yuyuhi to prove he was stronger than Hangetsu. Mikazuki had always aspired to surpass his brother, and now, encountering Yuyuhi whom Hangetsu had mentored, he saw defeating Yuyuhi as his new goal. However, Hina appeared mid-fight, effortlessly throwing Mikazuki aside. She was visibly emotional as she demonstrated a counter-move she had learned from Hangetsu. She forbade the two from fighting again. At that moment, another knight arrived. This was Nagumo, an older man not the eye-patch-wearing, gun-wielding type they might have expected. Nagumo explained that there were 12 knights in total. So far, he had encountered 3 others, the Owl, Black Cat, and Snake Knights. Nagumo reminded them of their duty to protect Earth from the Biscuit Hammer and warned them to be prepared to make sacrifices when facing their enemies. After saying he would see them again in the near future, Nagumo departed, with Mikazuki trailing after him. As Yuyuhi and his group headed home, Yuyuhi contemplated the possibility of having to face the remaining 10 knights to help Hina achieve her goal. Hina, too, believed Yuyuhi would one day challenge and defeat each of them. Meanwhile, Mikazuki, predictably, sought out Nagumo for a duel, but soon returned to complain to Yuyuhi that Nagumo, like his horse, was too fast. Yuyuhi ignored Mikazuki, insisting he leave his room and pay for the cabbage plant he had eaten. Later, Yuyuhi lay in bed, pondering what Hanjetsu's final wish might have been. The next morning, Yuyuhi spotted 2 mud golems on the mountain. Unable to reach Hina, he contacted Nagumo, who advised the group to focus on 1 golem at a time, as dealing with them solo was too risky. Yuyuhi recalled Noi's previous advice that knights must cooperate. Nagumo, meanwhile, encountered Mikazuki again. Mikazuki acknowledged the potential strength of the golems but insisted on challenging Nagumo first. Elsewhere, Hina quickly dispatched 1 golem, surprised by its weakness. She assumed the others had already dealt with a mountain golem, but was unaware that the one she defeated wasn't entirely destroyed. Nagumo gave Mikazuki a sound beating, asserting that he was nowhere near Hanjetsu's level. Stung by the remark, Mikazuki stood up to continue fighting. Meanwhile, Yuyuhi discovered the second golem. It seemed uninterested in fighting, so Yuyuhi decided to take it on alone. However, Noi noticed Yuyuhi's unstable mental state. As Yuyuhi recalled Hanjetsu's death, he stumbled and was narrowly saved by a girl who turned out to be the Snake Knight, Yako. Both Yuyuhi and Yako realized the golem had fled, showing no intent to fight. Back home, Yuyuhi felt shaken, realizing that while he believed himself to be strong, seeing someone he knew become a lifeless body had robbed him of the courage to fight. Later, Yako visited Yuyuhi, introducing herself and her snake companion, Shi. Noi asked Shi if it remembered anything about the past, but Shi admitted it didn't. Shi shared that during a previous battle, the Snake Knight had died early on while protecting the Lizard Knight. Noi apologized, expressing regret that despite being protected, his knight hadn't made it far. Shi dismissed the need for gratitude, indicating it bore no grudges. Before leaving, Yako bluntly told Yuyuhi that he shouldn't fight anymore, as he was only a burden to everyone else. Yuyuhi later asked Noi about the time he had been saved before. Noi explained that Shi's sacrifice had been in vain because his knight also perished soon after. Yuyuhi, not wanting Hanjetsu's death to be meaningless, decided he would continue fighting. The next day, Yuyuhi discovered another mud golem had appeared. He attempted to seek it out for battle, despite Noi advising him to stop and let Yako and Nagumo handle it. Meanwhile, Hina encountered the mud golem that had fled the day before. Nagumo, on the other hand, found Mikazuki causing trouble again. Nagumo thought that Mikazuki would learn his lesson only if he broke his arms and legs. Yako, seeing Yuyuhi's reckless actions, knocked him out to prevent him from interfering. She then encountered the mud golem Hina had failed to destroy the day before. Yuyuhi realized he was weak and useless, but he didn't want to keep relying on others for help. He wanted to become a hero and fight. He knew Noi must feel guilty for relying on Shi and Ludo for protection due to his own helplessness. Noi had once helped Yuyuhi save his grandfather, so Yuyuhi now considered him a close friend and wanted to fight alongside him. Determined, Yuyuhi charged at the mud golem and took it down. His strength increased dramatically, and he threw the golem away. At the same time, Nagumo used his abilities to restrain Mikazuki and kick him away. However, Mikazuki, using his own powers, created multiple padded-like shards to bounce off and attack Nagumo. Yuyuhi, to his surprise, was able to use Hanjetsu's techniques and knocked the golem back. He then slammed it down again, causing both Noi and Yako to be shocked. However, the golem that had fled earlier returned, consuming the remaining mud golem and becoming stronger. Hina rushed in and kicked the golem in the head, but it had no effect. She then gathered all her strength and delivered a powerful punch, sending the golem flying. Yuyuhi realized that Hanjetsu had used his wish to pass on all his combat techniques to Yuyuhi. Overwhelmed with emotion, Yuyuhi cried. Yako commented that if it weren't for Yuyuhi, she might have been in danger. That night, Yuyuhi dreamt of his own sky, and Hina entered, saying she wanted to reward him for growing stronger. However, Yuyuhi felt he didn't deserve it, as his growth hadn't been through his own effort. He believed that he wasn't worthy of the reward. But when he woke up, he realized he had made the wrong choice. On the way to school, Yuyuhi met Nagumo, who advised him to accept Mikazuki's challenge if it came up, to avoid Mikazuki causing trouble during a fight. Nagumo also mentioned that Yako wanted to thank Yuyuhi for saving her and was thinking of asking for his number. Yuyuhi felt he didn't need to be thanked. At school, Mikazuki approached Yuyuhi, challenging him to a fight. Yuyuhi refused, remembering Hina's warning that knights shouldn't fight each other. Besides, he trusted Hanjetsu's techniques were unbeatable and didn't feel the need to test them. Later, when Yuyuhi returned home, Yako called to thank him and invited him out that evening. Yuyuhi agreed, but suddenly Mikazuki intervened, saying he had taken Yako hostage and demanded Yuyuhi come meet him for a duel. Yuyuhi reluctantly agreed to the meeting, where he found Yako unharmed. She advised Yuyuhi to accept the duel, suggesting that part of Hanjetsu's techniques might be meant for Yuyuhi to pass on to Mikazuki, his younger brother. After the battle, Yuyuhi realized he still hadn't fully mastered Hanjetsu's techniques. Mikazuki still made it difficult for him to keep up. Mikazuki noticed Yuyuhi's troubled mind and suggested that he take some time to think about what he truly wanted. Yuyuhi still desired to destroy the world with Hina, but part of him also saw the people around him, which made him hesitant. Mikazuki left, and Yuyuhi was about to say something to Yako when Mikazuki returned, calling them over to see something. To their shock, Mikazuki had found the body of the mud golem Hina had knocked away the day before. Suddenly, a person emerged from the golem's mouth, revealing that their battles from now on would be much more difficult. Noi recognized the figure as the evil sorcerer they were meant to fight. The next morning, Yuyuhi was startled to find Hina and Nagumo in his room. They had come to introduce him to the Black Cat Knight, who then entered and introduced himself as Hayu. The group went out to eat, and Yuyuhi informed Nagumo about the fused monster still being alive and their encounter with the sorcerer. Nagumo concluded that they now needed to gather everyone for the upcoming battles. Yuyuhi asked about the Owl Knight, and Nagumo explained that the Owl Knight was just a child and not fit for combat. Yuyuhi noticed a pattern in the mud golems he had encountered. Each had a specific number of eyes. While he had seen golems ranging from 1 to 7 eyes, he realized he had never encountered a 6-eyed golem. Nagumo speculated that someone skilled must have defeated the 6-eyed golem, as the 7-eyed one would not have appeared otherwise. On his way home, Yuyuhi reflected on how Hanjetsu's techniques would be wasted if he didn't improve his speed. Later, Yako unexpectedly showed up at Yuyuhi's house to cook for him. Hina also stopped by, so Yako invited her to stay for dinner. Just after they finished eating, Mikazuki arrived and revealed that he had found 2 more knights, Machai, the Turtle Knight, and Subaru, the Chicken Knight. The chicken familiar mentioned that both girls had defeated a mud golem in the past, but Subaru clarified it had been thanks to their master's sacrifice, the Swordfish Knight. The following day, Yuyuhi realized they only needed 2 more knights to complete the group. He wondered about the 3 legendary knights Noi had mentioned, but suddenly, the last 2 knights appeared before him. Yuyuhi quickly contacted Hina to report that all 12 knights had been assembled. Hina instructed him to gather everyone. The 2 new arrivals met Nagumo and introduced themselves as Teru, the Mouse Knight, and Hanako, the Mantis Knight. The Owl Knight, a boy named Teiyu, was also summoned. Hina asked Yuyuhi if he loved the world, believing he would be the one to stop her after the battle. Yuyuhi reassured her of his dedication, telling her not to worry. The younger knights seemed nervous upon hearing about past sacrifices, but Hina gave a rousing speech to uplift their spirits. The next day, Yako brought some movies to Yuyuhi's house, surprising him as he didn't expect her to enjoy such films. She mentioned Yako's cosplaying hobby, but Yako cut him off and left. Yako indeed loved cosplaying but lacked the confidence to show others, fearing they would find her strange. She noted that Yako hadn't been this reserved when they first met. Back then, their encounter had been similar to Yuyuhi's and Noi's. Yako had initially tried to chase she away with a wooden sword, but she begged her to listen. After hearing the situation, Yako decided to use her wish immediately, not wanting to wait until she was on the brink of death. She wished for her family to keep smiling even if she were gone. She thought she was eccentric back then, but his opinion had since changed. Meanwhile, Yuyuhi and Hina ran into Nagumo during his morning training. He invited them for breakfast despite being unemployed. Over breakfast, Nagumo shared that he had a wife and a son but was now separated. He used to be a police officer but had quit recently. Nagumo became a knight after meeting the horse knight while handling a case involving an attacker targeting innocent people. While patrolling with his subordinate, Nagumo heard the horse speaking to him. Shortly after, he heard his subordinate's cries and rushed to subdue the criminal. Though his subordinate was injured, they managed to apprehend the attacker. However, upon bringing the culprit to the station, Nagumo discovered he was the police chief's son, who had been shielded from accountability by his father. Infuriated, Nagumo punched both father and son before resigning. Nagumo stated that he never saw himself as a righteous hero, either then or now. A righteous hero wouldn't resort to any means necessary to survive and win. That night, Yuyuhi encountered Hina in his dream again. Hina explained that the dreamscape was her creation, and anyone she invited could enter it. Meanwhile, Hayu, the Black Cat Knight, was revealed to also be able to enter the sorcerer Animus's domain. It seemed Hayu and Animus had known each other for some time. The cat familiar was aware of this, but Hayu remained puzzled as to why Animus was interested in him. Hayu later visited Hisami to inquire about theories of time travel and related phenomena. While such concepts were deemed impossible in their era, Hayu ran into Animus on his way back. Animus, knowing of Hugh's desire to uncover the secrets of the universe, offered to help him achieve that goal, as it aligned with Animus's own interests. Animus attempted to persuade Hayu to abandon the knights and join his side. However, Machai and Subaru arrived and drove Animus away. Upon returning, Hayu anticipated that Animus would seek him out again. When they met once more, Hayu directly asked if Animus was from the future. Animus didn't deny it and revealed that he had destroyed the future world and now sought to return to the past to witness the origins of existence. Faced with this revelation, Hayu made his decision. Using his powers, he created his own mud golem, declaring his intent to use his strength to bring happiness to humanity and extinguish Animus's fleeting desires. To Hugh's surprise, the young Teiyu had chosen to assist Animus. Hayu was banished from the encounter and decided to keep Teiyu's involvement a secret for now, as he wanted to understand Teiyu's motives. Hayu noted that Teiyu didn't appear enthusiastic about helping Animus. Meanwhile, Yuyuhi was digging pits on the mountain to trap mud golems, still struggling to improve his speed. Unexpectedly, he unearthed a box containing a letter addressed to him. The writer explained that they foresaw Yuyuhi digging there and had buried the box for him. Yuyuhi realized the writer was the late Swordfish Knight, who possessed the ability to see the future. Mikazuki, on the other hand, encountered Subaru on the road, and the two, both searching for Animus, decided to team up. Yuyuhi discovered a journal left by the Swordfish Knight detailing his life. The knight revealed that he had lived for 500 years. At the age of 5, he had been lost at sea and drifted ashore, where he met a monk who became his mentor. Through years of training, he attained enlightenment and awakened his ability to see all things. He could foresee everything in the world, but one day, the monk brought him a boy orphaned by war. The boy sought revenge against the samurai who had destroyed his village. After training, the boy left to fulfill his quest, but returned defeated and later passed away. Over the centuries, the knight trained many disciples, all of whom eventually died. Their experiences taught him that he was not a god but a mere mortal. One day, he met Machai and Subaru. Subaru had been crying because Machai had eaten her snack. The knight mediated the conflict by promising to buy Machai a replacement snack if she cleaned up the park. The two reconciled, and he foresaw that they would be his final disciples. As his powers waned, he encountered the swordfish, who bestowed upon him the title of knight. The knight told the swordfish it was unfortunate they had met when he was at his weakest, shocking the swordfish with the revelation that he only had a month to live. Determined, the swordfish resolved to help him leave behind as much as possible for the other knights. In the time that followed, the knight trained Machai and Subaru in combat. He taught them to function as an indomitable duo, one acting as a shield and the other as a spear. Nearing the end of his life, he confided that, despite living for 500 years, he still feared death. As Yuyuhi neared the journal's conclusion, he stopped reading, already knowing how it would end. The knight had left one final message for Yuyuhi, to take good care of the princess. During this time, Subaru recounted to Mikazuki the battle between her group and the six-eyed mud golem. One day, their master began acting unusually. He told them about the killing intent of the mud golems and led both girls up the mountain. Knowing he would die, but that the two children would remain safe, He planned to use his life to teach them how to fight. However, things didn't go as expected when the mud golem found them and attacked. Despite the master using spells to defend them, the creature's spikes pierced him. He urged the two to find a way to fight back, prompting Machai to pull Subaru away to strategize. Meanwhile, Swordfish observed that the master's lesson was flawed. Instead of teaching about death, he believed the master should have emphasized the will to fight and the determination to survive until the very end to live without regrets. Left with no choice, Swordfish teleported in to assist the girls, striking the mud golem's head and telling them to finish it off. The two worked together, creating a sturdy shield that deflected the golem's spike attacks. They then transformed the shield into a weapon and destroyed the mud golem. Afterward, the master reminded them to complement each other's weaknesses and work together harmoniously. He instructed them to tell Animus, if they ever encountered him, that even with omniscience like his, both Animus and the master were mere mortals, not gods. The girls wanted to seek help, but the master confided in Swordfish his wish for the two girls to surpass him and continue moving forward. He then passed away, joining his previous disciples and waiting for the girls on the other side. Subaru was deeply saddened, as no one knew where her master came from. People acted as though he had never existed, despite the truth. Mikazuki admired the master and regretted not meeting him sooner. A few days later, Yuyuhi and Hina trained Hanako and Teru. Noi suggested that instead of focusing on offensive techniques, they should practice dodging to increase their chances of survival. Hina agreed and decided to have the two practice dodging her attacks. During training, Mikazuki called unexpectedly and convinced Yuyuhi to lead the group on a summer camp trip. Hina seemed intrigued, so the group soon headed to the beach. Hayu and Nagumo went fishing while Tayu, Yuyuhi, and Hanako stayed on shore since none of them could swim. The swimmers invited them into the water, but the trio refused until Hina called out, and Yuyuhi immediately ran over. That evening, Mikazuki suggested the boys share a few beers, but Tayu opted to play video games, and the two older men went to the sauna. Since Teru was underage, he settled for water. Mikazuki asked if Teru was dating Hanako, but Teru replied they were just childhood friends. However, Teru's mouse remarked that the two were so close Hanako would even climb through his window to visit. Noi added that Hina often climbed into Yuyuhi's room, prompting Mikazuki to grow jealous and storm off. "Someone, please save this crow," he exclaimed. Yuyuhi went for a walk before heading to bed, while Mikazuki bumped into Subaru, who advised him to live more seriously. While walking along the beach, Yuyuhi spotted Hina returning from the sea. She had been experimenting with her powers in a new way to explore their potential. Yako, passing by, overheard Hina mentioning her intent to destroy this world. However, Yako decided to keep it to herself for now, as she had feelings for Yuyuhi and wanted to understand the situation better. The following morning, the presence of a mud golem was detected. The group ascended the mountain and soon encountered the same seven-eyed creature from before. Animus suddenly appeared, capturing Yuyuhi and Hina and teleporting them to the sea. Mikazuki pursued them, leaving Nagumo to lead the rest of the group in fighting the monster. Animus claimed he had come to talk with Yuyuhi and Hina and meant no harm. Meanwhile, the knights struggled against the relentless creature. It moved continuously without tiring, forcing the group to find temporary shelter. Hayu wanted to find a way to touch the monster, as he already had a plan in mind. The group quickly moved to distract the creature and give Hayu an opening, though they were unsure if they could completely defeat the monster without risking their lives. Meanwhile, Animus revealed to Yuyuhi that the soul possessing Hina was actually Anima, his younger sister. However, Anima wasn't a sibling in the conventional sense. She was created from Animus's excess power. What baffled Animus was why Anima had orchestrated this game solely to interfere with him. Yuyuhi finally understood why the hammer hadn't destroyed the world immediately. Animus was also bound by the rules that Anima had imposed. However, Hina wasn't Anima and couldn't comprehend his words. She charged forward, landing a powerful punch into the sea, sending water spraying everywhere. This drew the seven-eyed monster's attention, allowing Hayu to get close. He managed to extract part of the creature's core, but it quickly turned to attack Yako. Nagumo enhanced Yako's wooden sword to help her survive. Hayu then realized that the clay golem he had created earlier had been consumed by the monster, and he couldn't fully restore it. Taking advantage of the distraction, Machai and Subaru created weapons and slashed at the creature. All the knights combined their strength to deliver a final, powerful strike, successfully destroying the monster. Yuyuhi brought Hina back to shore, just as Mikazuki arrived, only to find that Animus had fled. When Nagumo reported the monster's defeat, Mikazuki was even more shocked. Nagumo punished him for abandoning his teammates, declaring that Mikazuki would be the only one not allowed to eat at the group's celebratory feast that evening. The next day, Yuyuhi noticed that Hayu had created two-eyed clay golems for the knights to practice against. Although these creatures weren't too strong, the fact that Mikazuki could handle one on his own showed he wasn't as weak as he appeared. Yuyuhi told Mikazuki to rest so he could take a turn. Reflecting on Hina's words about their untapped potential, Yuyuhi attempted to transform his ability into an offensive weapon, similar to Hangetsu's technique. He succeeded, damaging the monster's arm. The following day, Hina unexpectedly brought her belongings to Yuyuhi's house, asking to stay for a while, as she had just run away from home. Yuyuhi immediately agreed. Hina explained that she left because her mother had recently returned. Soon after, Hisame showed up to bring Hina back, accusing her of troubling Yuyuhi. Yuyuhi wanted to argue but fell silent under Hisame's stern glare. When Hina refused to return, Hisame decided to take Yuyuhi to her house to separate the two. She let Yuyuhi stay in her father's room temporarily. Noi observed that Hina and her mother didn't seem to have a good relationship. Later, Yuyuhi received a phone call from his uncle, asking if he planned to visit home during the summer since his grandfather was much healthier now. Not ready to face his grandfather, Yuyuhi said he'd call back later. That night, Yuyuhi dreamt of Hina, who shared that she didn't want to see her mother because she was always busy with her medical work. Although Hina understood her mother's dedication to helping others, she felt hurt by the lack of time her mother had for her. Meanwhile, Hisame was seen conversing with someone who seemed to be anima within Hina. Hisame revealed that she had spent a significant amount of time in France with their mother, searching for a cure for Hina's condition. The fact that they only saw Hina twice a year when she was young seemed to be the reason for Hina's emotional distance. The next morning, Yuyuhi woke Hisame to deliver Hina's message that she wouldn't join them for breakfast. At the training grounds, the group complained about Mikazuki monopolizing the practice golem, leaving no opportunity for others to train. Yuyuhi had no choice but to wait until Mikazuki was exhausted. Hisame continued urging Hina to return home, but she refused. That evening, Hisame approached Yuyuhi to share a few beers. Yuyuhi wondered why Hina avoided her mother, prompting Hisame to reflect that it might have started 4 years ago, before Hina's health improved. At that time, Hina unexpectedly grew gravely ill and was unconscious for a week. Only Hisame returned home, as their mother was tied up with patients in France. This seemed to create a rift between mother and daughter. Hisame asked Yuyuhi if Hina might hate her, as she lacked a clear reason to have gone to France and worried that Hina might resent her. Thinking of how Hangetsu would handle it, Yuyuhi suggested they directly ask Hina. He encouraged Hisame not to treat Hina like a child and to be straightforward in their conversation, reminding her to smile. Yuyuhi left Hisame alone to talk with Hina, but after a while, Hisame returned, saying Hina had fallen asleep before they could talk. However, Hisame appeared more cheerful. The next day, Yuyuhi informed Hina that her mother would leave that evening. Hina promised to return home that night, prompting Hisame to go speak with her. Yuyuhi stepped out to give them privacy. Hisame apologized to Hina for leaving her to go to France without a clear purpose. Hina revealed she avoided her family because she felt guilty, believing her birth was the reason their family was torn apart. Hisame forbade Hina from thinking such thoughts, apologizing for making her feel that way. Hina also apologized, and the sisters resolved their issues. However, Hina wasn't yet ready to face her mother. Yuyuhi followed her and urged her to return, but she was scared that her mother might not love her anymore. Hina jumped across the river, and Yuyuhi used his abilities to follow, assuring her that if she was scared, he would go with her. When they returned, Hina's mother ran to her and embraced her, crying. The family reconciled, and that evening, Yuyuhi called his uncle to say he would visit his grandfather. The next morning, during training, Yuyuhi saw Hina bring someone unfamiliar. Noi immediately recognized her as Princess Anima, but Anima didn't seem to care much about Noi. Hina didn't understand why Anima had appeared next to her that morning. Yuyuhi informed the group about Anima's presence. While most reacted indifferently, the Beast Knight sighed heavily. As Yuyuhi went to get something to eat, he noticed a hallway outside the door. Noi identified this as Anima's doing. Yuyuhi walked through the hallway and suddenly found himself in another dimension, where the others in the group had also been transported. Yako was embarrassed because she hadn't had time to change out of her cosplay outfit. Once everyone was gathered, Anima summoned Nagumo's horse, commanding it to kneel. She transformed it into a unicorn, officially designating Nagumo as the legendary Unicorn Knight. Anima dissolved the space, returning everyone home. Yuyuhi realized that the 12 Beast Knights were divided into 3 groups, with one person from each group randomly chosen to become a legendary knight. Nagumo was the first, leaving the identities of the other 2 unknown. Suddenly, an 8-eyed mud golem appeared. Hina called to say she couldn't join the fight because Anima had drained her strength. She had only one request for the knights, not to die. The group assembled on the mountain, where they encountered Animus and the 8-eyed monster. Mikazuki quickly pulled 2 girls out of the monster's attack range. Hayu sent his golem to fight, but it was destroyed in a single blow by the monster's spiked tail. At that moment, Nagumo dove from the sky like a drill, breaking the spiked tail. Animus and the monster fled, leaving the knights temporarily safe. Back in training, Hayu created a 3-eyed mud golem with an arm on its head to assist the knights. Its primary weapon was its sharp teeth. Yuyuhi learned about Taru's ability to increase molecular temperature to produce fire, while Hanako's ability allowed her to freeze matter. Both Yuyuhi and Hanako were content with not naming their techniques, but most others felt that naming techniques made them cooler. When Yuyuhi returned home, he was startled to find Anima hanging upside down from his ceiling. He asked her what she was doing there, and Anima replied that she wanted something to eat. Yuyuhi gave her a cup of instant noodles, but it wasn't enough, so she demanded more. Yuyuhi agreed only if Anima would tell him how to help Hina recover. Anima explained that eating replenished her energy, which she was transferring to Hina. Noi suggested calling Yako and Teru to cook, as both were skilled. Anima quickly created a portal and brought the 2 over. Yako was embarrassed, having been caught in cosplay again. After they prepared food for Anima, Teru asked who the other 2 chosen legendary knights were. Anima refused to reveal their identities, leaving everyone stumped. That afternoon, Yuyuhi went to the mountain to dig holes to trap the 8-eyed monster. He dug multiple pits to increase the chances of success. Mikazuki passed by, and Yuyuhi invited him to have a beer. The next morning, Animus and the 8-eyed monster reappeared. The Beast Knights gathered quickly. Nagumo noticed the monster's tail had regenerated and launched the first attack, repeatedly using a drill kick technique. However, everyone could see Nagumo was rushing, and he was eventually knocked away. The others had to step in to support him. Nagumo felt embarrassed for trying to show off in front of the younger members and failing. Teru splashed water on the monster's head and set it on fire, causing it to panic. Hugh's mud golem restrained the monster briefly, but it spun rapidly, creating a tornado to counterattack. The 2 girls combined their powers to strike the monster as it charged, but they missed. Nagumo used his abilities to lock the monster in place. With it immobilized, the group easily defeated it. Later, Anima informed Hina that the Beast Knights had vanquished the mud golem. Anima then went off in search of more food. The story shifted to Teru and Hanako. On an ordinary day, they unexpectedly became the Mouse Knight and the Mantis Knight. The Mouse Knight noticed Hanako was reserved and emotionally distant, which he felt suited the Mantis Knight's archetype. Brave individuals were often paired with the Mantis, while cowards were paired with the Mouse. Teru pondered what he should wish for. That evening, he learned Hanako had wished for the death of a criminal mentioned in the news. The Mouse Knight was displeased, warning that wishing death upon others would bring karmic consequences. Hanako remained unfazed, saying she would accept the consequences. Teru made his wish for Hanako to survive a fatal injury once. The Mouse Knight explained that the condition for this wish to work was that Hanako must still be conscious when injured. Instant death would render it ineffective. Back in the present, Teru understood his feelings for Hanako, but she remained oblivious to the emotions between them. While cooking for Yuyuhi and Mikazuki during their drinking session, the group encouraged Teru to confess to Hanako. Hina stopped by to return a book she had borrowed after staying overnight in Yuyuhi's room. Mikazuki teased them about their relationship, but Yuyuhi and Hina clarified it was due to specific circumstances that night. Feeling warm, Hina suggested they sit on the roof to cool off. Later, Teru invited Hanako to join him on the roof sometime, but she seemed uninterested. That night, Teru couldn't sleep, debating whether to confess his feelings. The next morning, Teru practiced using his powers for better mobility, inspired by Yuyuhi's techniques. Suddenly, another mud golem appeared. This time, it was a lancer type with a group of smaller minions. The group quickly assembled to face the new threat. The lesser minions quickly charged in, pulling away those capable of attacking, effectively separating the 2 men and 2 girls from the rest of the team. Knowing they had to deal with a small fry before regrouping, they resolved to finish them off quickly. Meanwhile, Hina rushed to confront the mud golem, but its balance of offense and defense made it difficult for her to gain the upper hand. Yuyuhi stepped in to assist her. Teru attempted to support by using fire, but was unexpectedly targeted by the golem. Thanks to his newly learned skills, he managed to dodge. However, noticing Hanako was within range of the golem's attack, Teru used his power to shield her. Both were pierced by the golem's lance. In his final moments, Teru confessed his feelings to Hanako, who had long been aware of them. Teru then unleashed a burst of fire, forcing the golem to retreat. His wish subsequently activated, saving Hanako, but the Mantis Knight questioned why Teru sacrificed himself when he knew Hanako would survive, deeming his death unnecessary. Elsewhere, Nagumo's group remained trapped in the enemy's encirclement. At that moment, Mikazuki arrived, instructing them to focus on defense while he handled the situation. Using his abilities, Mikazuki created several paths for movement. However, instead of utilizing them for mobility, he transformed them into spears, similar to Hangetsu's style, eliminating a vast number of enemies. The remaining minions fled, leaving Mikazuki exhausted. Upon regrouping, everyone was shocked by Teru's death. Nagumo instructed the group to head back, leaving him to finish things up. The 2 girls were heartbroken by Teru's passing. Teiyu was shaken with fear, and the Black Cat Knight questioned how Hayu and Nagumo seemed unaffected. Hayu, however, remarked that no one was truly strong in moments like these. Nagumo later requested his former assistant to handle matters concerning Teru. She unexpectedly reported that their superiors had ordered her to delete Nagumo's contact from Teru's phone and mentioned a game, leading Nagumo to suspect Animus's interference with the police. Meanwhile, Mikazuki trained harder than ever, and Hanako displayed little emotion over Teru's death, needing more time to grasp the void left by his absence. Noi acknowledged Teru as a true knight, willing to risk everything to save Hanako despite knowing she would survive due to his wish. Anima suddenly approached Yuyuhi, asking if he wanted to gain power. Yuyuhi agreed and took her hand, only to be brought face to face with Yako. Anima announced that the 2 would fight to determine who would inherit the power of the legendary knight. Both, driven by their own reasons to grow stronger, resolved not to hold back. Yako used her ability to control wooden swords, attacking from a distance. Yuyuhi tried to close in but was repeatedly repelled and knocked down by Yako's strength. Noi observed that Yuyuhi still lacked the resolve to fight, held back by his insecurities and belief that he couldn't protect others despite inheriting Hangetsu's strength. Yuyuhi began to think it might be better to let Yako have the power instead. She was then transformed into a dragon by Anima. Yako declared her fondness for Yuyuhi and vowed to stop him if necessary. Shortly after, the group was returned. Meanwhile, Hanako, in frustration, attempted to reject the Mantis Knight, similar to Yuyuhi's past struggles. However, this was futile, and the Mantis Knight couldn't blame her as it was one of the rare times Hanako displayed emotion. She left the house without an umbrella despite the imminent rain. Yuyuhi headed to the mountain to fill in the holes he had dug, deeming them useless. There, he encountered Mikazuki, who decided to help him. On their way down, they unexpectedly encountered Hangetsu. Mikazuki immediately delivered a swift kick, and Yuyuhi used his powers to strike. They accused Animus of going too far. The figure revealed itself to be an 11-eyed golem. Yuyuhi, confused about the whereabouts of the 9 and 10-eyed golems, was startled when the 11-eyed one spoke, revealing they had already encountered the 10-eyed golem. The 11-eyed golem then transformed into Hina, prompting the 2 to retreat for the moment. Yuyuhi later reported the incident to Nagumo, advising him to thoroughly check everyone's abilities before proceeding with any decisions. Meanwhile, Hanako encountered a manifestation of Teru. The 2 sat together, reminiscing. Hanako recalled how, during their childhood, Teru was always by her side, but would often cry first whenever something happened. Even when she fell and got hurt, Teru would cry for her. Over time, his tears seemed to absorb her sadness. Hanako had always seen herself as an older sister figure who needed to care for him. She had imagined them going to university together, but when Teru chose to graduate from high school and pursue culinary studies instead, Hanako began to lose her own sense of direction. She had often smiled on Teru's behalf, but when she saw his genuine happiness, she felt numb inside. Seeking to rediscover her emotions, she decided to stay close to him. Hanako understood that this Teru was not real, yet she expressed gratitude for its presence, which helped her regain emotional balance. The golem then left, promising to meet her on the battlefield next time. Shortly after, the nine-eyed golem reappeared, and the entire night squad gathered, dressed in black, to honor Teru's memory. However, Hina could not attend. Hanako, now prepared for what lay ahead, had cut her hair short and resolved to shed her bookworm persona to become a warrior. Mikazuki began suspecting the lesser minions were part of the 10-eyed golem's plan, prompting the group to stay vigilant against both golems. Meanwhile, Nagumo and Yako entered their legendary knight forms to engage in battle. Hanako approached Animus, requesting that he leave the nine-eyed golem for her to handle. Animus agreed to consider it. During the fight, Yako and Nagumo locked down the golem's weapon, while Mikazuki launched an assault with a field of spears. Hayu positioned another golem to block the monster's lance, ultimately breaking it. The group launched an all-out attack, forcing the creature to flee. However, Hanako lay in wait at the end of its path, unleashing a barrage of ice spikes. She channeled all her emotions into delivering the finishing blow. Noi observed that while Hangetsu and the Swordfish Knight were deeply respected, Teru was uniquely beloved by everyone. Inspired by his legacy, Hanako decided to enroll in culinary school in his stead. One day at school, Mikazuki surprised Yuyuhi with an offer of a high-paying, easy part-time job. Intrigued, Yuyuhi agreed and was introduced to an office where he would work as a bodyguard. The boss, familiar with the Hangetsu siblings, immediately hired Yuyuhi upon learning he was Hangetsu's apprentice. Afterward, Yuyuhi enjoyed a steak meal, and Mikazuki invited Hina to join them. Hina, in turn, brought Anima along. During the meal, Mikazuki shared a story about his high school days when Hangetsu was in college. Mikazuki would often brag about his street fighting victories, but Hangetsu dismissed it, saying fighting prowess was useless for getting a job. To prove his point, Hangetsu demonstrated that Mikazuki still had much to learn. Mikazuki attributed his defeat to Hangetsu's age advantage, prompting Hangetsu to suggest a rematch when Mikazuki grew older. However, Mikazuki believed Hangetsu harbored a secret to his strength and began tailing him. One day, Mikazuki was caught by a group of gangsters who assumed he was spying on Hangetsu under someone's orders. They interrogated him, but Mikazuki provoked them and was captured. The gangsters wanted to know Mikazuki's connection to Hangetsu, who had been disrupting their operations. Hangetsu eventually tracked them down, single-handedly taking out the gang and rescuing Mikazuki. He then brought Mikazuki to the boss, a man who handled everything from security to resolving disputes. Recognizing Mikazuki's potential and desire to surpass Hangetsu, the boss urged Hangetsu to train him properly. Over the next 6 years, Mikazuki grew strong enough to challenge Hangetsu in an intense duel that left the latter struggling. Acknowledging Mikazuki's talent, Hangetsu decided to take him along for part-time jobs. The story ends with Hina falling asleep, while Yuyuhi feels reinvigorated and sets up a rematch with Mikazuki for the weekend. Anima declares that the winner of the duel will get to date Hina. That night, Noi asks Yuyuhi whether he believes he can win, to which Yuyuhi replies that he must win, as he plans to train with Mikazuki even more from now on. By the weekend, Mikazuki tells the two girls about his duel with Yuyuhi. The Beast Knights suggest the Crow Knight say something, but Mikazuki recalls a time when the Crow Knight didn't speak, which was when he used his wish while in India. There, he saw a young girl performing for him, but had nothing to give her, so he wished for a loaf of bread. The two girls find Mikazuki to be truly an oddball. Meanwhile, Teiyu delivers books to the 11-eyed creature to help it learn about the world. The 10-eyed clay dolls are continuously created from nothingness, emitting an aura to lure the knights to their location. The group quickly gathers and is stunned by the sheer number of these creatures. They suspect that there must be a core entity somewhere, and unless it is destroyed, the clay dolls will keep multiplying. Hina charges in, wiping out the swarm until none are left. Animus laughs and decides to withdraw. Rain begins to pour, and Yuyuhi assumes that Mikazuki will postpone the duel. However, Mikazuki insists on fighting. Both unexpectedly enter Anima's realm, where she wishes to witness their battle. Yuyuhi removes his glasses and charges at Mikazuki, who creates his unique formation to maneuver through the air. Yuyuhi counters by using his abilities to ram into Mikazuki, who finds the fight exhilarating. Mikazuki realizes that Yuyuhi is finally enjoying combat, something he had long struggled to feel. Yuyuhi then leaps forward, grabs Mikazuki, pulls him out of his formation, and slams him hard onto the ground. The duel ends, and Mikazuki is sent back to the dojo. Admitting he enjoyed the fight, Mikazuki meets the two girls and assumes Yuyuhi is now on a date with Hina. However, Machai comments that Mikazuki already has 2 flowers in his hands and doesn't need to chase after Hina. Mikazuki decides he will occasionally hang out with both girls instead. Meanwhile, Yuyuhi regrets having to foot the bill for the insatiable appetites of the 2 girls. The next day, the knights gather, and Hayu reveals he has partially uncovered the rules of the game. Each monster seems to have a unique name and appears in a specific month. He theorizes that there are only 12 monsters in total, and so far, only the 9th monster has been confirmed defeated, leaving 3 more. Soon after, the story shifts focus to the 2 girls, Machai and Subaru. One evening, while Yuyuhi is out eating ramen, he unexpectedly encounters Machai and Teiyu. The young Teiyu asks what wishes the two have made, but Machai keeps hers a secret while Yuyuhi openly shares his. Teiyu is seeking inspiration for his own wish, as he has yet to use it. Later, Subaru cleans up Machai's room as usual, and that night, Machai trains hard. She believes she's not suited for intellectual tasks like Subaru, Yuyuhi, or Hayu, so she strives to enhance her strength to protect Subaru. Once strong enough, she hopes to claim Subaru from Mikazuki. The two never discuss their wishes, respecting each other's privacy. Machai recalls half a year ago when she first met the Turtle Knight and brought him to show Subaru. However, Subaru had already met the Chicken Knight. Together, they introduced their knights to their master, who advised them to listen to what their knights had to say. Both knights were surprised the master could predict that he would become the Swordfish Knight. That night, the two made their wishes to ensure each other's happiness. Meanwhile, Teiyu delivers books to the 11-eyed creature once more, but the clay dolls reappear and attack immediately, forcing Teiyu to flee. The knights had to gather once again to clean up the clay creatures. Although the task wasn't overly difficult, they weren't sure if any had managed to escape. However, Hina noticed that these creatures were tougher than before. The next day, while Yuyuhi was out for a walk, Noi asked him what he planned to do about Yako's confession. Yuyuhi pretended not to understand and claimed he didn't want to talk about it. Shortly after, he ran into Yako again. Despite feeling somewhat awkward, Yako decided to act as though the confession had never happened. Meanwhile, Teiyu took the 11-eyed creature to the movies to help it learn. The creature reflected that, as a clay being, it could experience emotions not empathy for loss, but a sense of curiosity and a desire to explore. It also observed that Teiyu didn't seem close to his peers. The two of them stayed together until evening, and the 11-eyed creature proposed swapping places with Teiyu for a day to see if anyone would notice the difference. Later, Teiyu went up the mountain and encountered Animus, who gave him a sleeping bag to use for the night. Teiyu reminisced about the time he first met the Owl Knight, when he wished for everything to be destroyed, which led Animus to approach him. Animus revealed that the previous Owl Knight had served him as well, and he proposed an alliance with Teiyu. The next morning, the 11-eyed creature returned, realizing that real life and movies were vastly different. Suddenly, the clay creatures reappeared and launched an attack, prompting the knights to regroup. They observed that the creatures were becoming stronger and more numerous. Hayu instructed everyone to fall back so he could test something. He sent his clay clone to fight, but it was overwhelmed by the creatures, which had grown significantly stronger. Hayu was forced to activate the self-destruct mechanism on his clone to eliminate the creatures this time. A few days later, Mikazuki was jogging on the mountain and stumbled upon Teiyu, who had fallen into one of Yuyuhi's old traps. When Mikazuki asked what Teiyu was doing there, Teiyu, worried about being exposed, claimed he was training. Mikazuki believed him. Around the same time, Yuyuhi met the two girls again at the ramen shop. Later, Teiyu left with Mikazuki, who took him to Yuyuhi's house for a drink. Seeing the two girls there as well, Yuyuhi mentioned that he wanted to return their master's book to them. The group ended up enjoying a meal together, and Teiyu seemed to appreciate the lively atmosphere. That night, Mikazuki escorted the three kids home. The two girls gave Teiyu the master's book, saying they had learned enough from it and wanted to pass it on. After the girls left, Mikazuki expressed concern that Teiyu's parents might worry about him, but Teiyu replied that his family was the opposite. Just then, Teiyu's father arrived to pick him up, and Mikazuki left. Teiyu later told the 11-eyed creature to stop meddling so much, though it was only trying to show concern for him. It also expressed interest in reading the book, but Teiyu kept it for himself to read first. Teiyu hoped the metaphorical hammer would soon descend upon the world. A few days later, the knights encountered the clay creatures again, which had evolved further. They noticed one distinct creature among the group and quickly charged at it. Hina was surprised when the distinct creature transformed into a cartoon character she loved. With a single knife slash, the creature created an opening that allowed the other monsters to split the knights apart. Most were able to handle themselves, with Hanako finding a water source to use her abilities, while the three kids regrouped and stuck together. Only Hina and the two legendary knights faced off against the shape-shifting 11-eyed creature. Nagumo instructed Yako to assist the others. As she ran off, the 11-eyed creature targeted her, forcing Hina and Nagumo to provide cover. Meanwhile, Yuyuhi chose not to fight, instead using his abilities to search for everyone. He ran into Mikazuki, who shared the same idea. The three kids had fled down the hill, but Subaru twisted his ankle during the escape, so they took shelter in a nearby cave. Yako eventually found Hanako and rescued her so they could regroup with the others. The 11-eyed creature took on the appearance of Hisama to stop Hina from attacking. When Nagumo charged in, it transformed into an image of his son, but Nagumo remained composed and kicked it without hesitation, refusing to be deceived by such tricks. Hayu then arrived, riding his clay construct to support Hina and Nagumo. Meanwhile, Teiyu, hiding in the cave with the others, worried they would eventually die if they stayed there. He wasn't sure if Animus would betray him, but he felt indifferent about surviving if it meant continuing to live without being loved. Machai, frustrated by Teiyu's defeatist attitude, punched him and told him to stop giving up so easily, urging him to create happy memories if he didn't have any yet. When Machai asked Teiyu about his ability, he revealed that he could reverse the time of anything, though only slightly. Machai then asked Teiyu to use his power to reverse Subaru's injured ankle. This worked, and Subaru was healed. However, the creatures soon tracked them down. Fortunately, Mikazuki and Yuyuhi arrived in time to help. Teiyu found a renewed will to live, and the group managed to escape the cave together. Yuyuhi lured the creatures into one of his traps, a pitfall, and the two girls combined their powers to crush the monsters. Yako, exhausted from the effort, was escorted home by Hanako. Meanwhile, Hugh's clay construct was destroyed, and the 11-eyed creature still showed no signs of weakening. Animus appeared and decided to end the battle for now, as the minions had all been wiped out and needed time to recover. During the group's debrief, Hayu shared his realization about the 10-eyed creature's secret. It had a core form that continuously spawned replicas. He believed Animus had hidden the core somewhere since they had scoured the mountain without finding it. Teiyu reflected on his past and regretted not understanding his abilities sooner, believing he could have saved Teru. As he returned home, he asked the owl about the previous owl knight, who had betrayed the knights. The owl explained that after witnessing the loss of their comrades, the previous knight was consumed by guilt and turned against Animus, only to be swiftly killed by him. The owl assured Teiyu that it wouldn't interfere with his choices, whether he sided with Animus or chose to fight. Back at home, Teiyu discovered the 10-eyed creature in his closet. He fought it relentlessly, enduring injuries but ultimately defeating it. Anima appeared, declaring Teiyu the final legendary knight and repairing his home. She also revealed that Teiyu's younger brother had awakened the ability to see clay constructs and was the first to witness Teiyu's bravery. Afterward, Animus visited Teiyu, unfazed by the betrayal. He admitted he never fully expected Teiyu's loyalty and then left. Hanako later called Teiyu, revealing that she knew about his abilities and the real reason he avoided her. She assured him she didn't blame him for Teru's death, as Teru had been beyond saving. Teiyu hung up and fell asleep. A few days later, Hayu mentioned he was out of ideas for creating new clay constructs and asked the group for suggestions. They decided to sketch some designs together. Once they had a few concepts, they headed home. On the way, Hayu encountered Animus and his group. The 11-eyed creature demanded that Hayu create a powerful clay construct so it could fight to its heart's content, mocking how easily the knights could be killed with a single strike. Animus once again tried to recruit Hayu, but he refused, prompting Animus to mock him, claiming Hayu could never create a perfect construct like his own. Animus saw himself as a god, but Hayu vowed to bring him back to reality. Later, the two girls invited Taeyu out for ramen, while Hayu returned home to work on a new construct design. The next day, Hayu gathered everyone to reveal what he had created, a model based on Yuyuhi's sketch. Yako and Mikazuki volunteered to test their strength against the new clay construct. Yako, serious from the start, destroyed the clay construct with a single blow, proving it was still far from capable of standing against the 11-eyed creature. The next day, Hayu sought advice from Yuyuhi on how to stimulate his creativity. Yuyuhi suggested digging holes, an activity he found oddly therapeutic. While the method wasn't particularly innovative, it had helped Yuyuhi improve his physical endurance over time. Together, they spent an afternoon digging, and Hayu felt a bit more refreshed. Upon returning home, Yuyuhi received devastating news. His grandfather had passed away in an accident. Despite having wished for his grandfather's recovery from illness, fate had dealt another blow, leading Yuyuhi to reflect on how life and death follow their own course. During the funeral, Yuyuhi's cousin shared that their grandfather often wrote letters to him, but most were returned unsent. She handed him the unsent letters, and upon reading them, Yuyuhi discovered they were filled with concern and questions about when he would visit again. Yuyuhi later returned to the storeroom, where he found the chains that had once bound him. Casting them aside, he chose to forgive his grandfather for the hardships he had caused. That night, Yuyuhi dreamed of meeting his grandfather, where they shared a heartfelt conversation. His grandfather unexpectedly departed with Yuyuhi's father in the dream, prompting Yuyuhi to chase after them, only to realize he was dreaming. In his dreamscape, Yuyuhi approached the gate in Hina's subconscious world, where Anima appeared. She explained that Yuyuhi had been able to enter this space because of Hina's invitations, but since Hina's mastery of the space was incomplete, memories of these dreams often faded upon waking. Anima, however, could allow Yuyuhi to retain these memories and presented him with a challenge. She hinted that the key to Yuyuhi's guilt was forming, though she did not explain why she had chosen him. Yuyuhi passed through the gate and ascended a staircase, where he encountered Henjetsu. This mirrored the dream Henjetsu had once described, and his purpose here was to block Yuyuhi's path. Forced to fight, the two engaged in intense hand-to-hand combat. Henjetsu acknowledged that Yuyuhi had mastered the techniques he had taught, but noted that his body wasn't yet fully adapted to them. Despite Henjetsu's clear upper hand, Yuyuhi unleashed his trump card, spreading his power throughout his body to enhance his speed and strength. Surprised by the new ability, Henjetsu allowed himself to be defeated and let Yuyuhi pass. On the second step, Yuyuhi encountered his master, who was there only to observe. The master inquired about the well-being of the two children, to which Yuyuhi replied they were healthy. After a brief handshake, Yuyuhi continued upward. At the third step, Anima appeared, rewarding him with a kiss for overcoming the challenges. She assured him that Hina would forgive his actions, but reminded him that he belonged to her. At the highest step, Yuyuhi came face to face with the hammer, now within close reach. The next morning, the 11-eyed creature reappeared, prompting the knights to gather for battle without Hina or Yuyuhi. The creature took the form of a classic hero from old cartoons, much to Nagumo's surprise. Nagumo, who had once played the villain in a wrestling match against such a hero, decided to fight for nostalgia's sake. However, this version of the hero was far tougher and more dangerous. The two girls had to step in to save Nagumo from being crushed. Mikazuki launched an attack, but felt the pain of striking the creature's incredibly durable body. Yako also struggled to make an impact, forcing Taeyu to use his ability to heal the group. Hanako created ice, causing the creature to slip and fall, while Hayu unleashed a new clay construct specializing in offense, which fired relentlessly at the 11-eyed monster. When the dust settled, the 11-eyed golem remained completely unscathed and even declared that this puppet was still not strong enough to challenge it. It gave the group a deadline of 10 days to create a stronger puppet. If they failed, it would come for their families and take their lives. After delivering this ultimatum, the 11-eyed golem left, while Nagumo decided that he would rematch it after the 10 days. 2 days later, Yuyuhi returned and heard about the upcoming battle set to take place in 8 days. He also noticed that the hammer had undergone some slight changes. Meanwhile, the two young girls sought out Mikazuki to experiment with combining their abilities, while Hanako turned to Yako to learn how to cook. Although they were still unsure how to deal with the 11-eyed golem, the final decision hinged on Hayu and whether his puppet would meet the creature's expectations. Hanako suggested that Yako should invite Yuyuhi to train with her, as someone as mobile as Yuyuhi would be essential for Yako to practice controlling and capturing enemies. Yuyuhi, eager to adapt to his new speed, trained diligently with Yako. Although he was repeatedly restrained by her ability when trying to get close, he remained undeterred. They trained together until the evening, after which Yako invited Yuyuhi over to her house for a meal. During the meal, they exchanged casual small talk until she, tired of the awkwardness, directly asked Yuyuhi what he planned to do about Yako's confession. Yuyuhi admitted that he had heard her confession, but didn't catch the following part. Yako then openly admitted that she knew Yuyuhi and Hina were planning to destroy the world. Yuyuhi replied that it was something they would consider only after defeating Animus, so for now, they could still be friends. However, Yako declared that she would do her best to stop him, and if she succeeded, Yuyuhi would have to date her. Yuyuhi said he would think about it. Meanwhile, the 11-eyed golem finished reading the master's journal and pondered the nature of humanity and how it, as a mud puppet, differed from humans. At the same time, Hayu seemed to have figured out how to create a new puppet. When the next battle began, the two young girls and Mikazuki tested out a new technique. Mikazuki's attacking mouths were reinforced with the girls' abilities, turning them into spears that were launched at the 11-eyed golem. Although it remained unscathed, Hina charged in and kicked it toward the others, causing it to transform into the 9-eyed form they had encountered before. Hanako used the fire technique she had learned from Taru to burn it. Hina and Yako worked together to knock it down, forcing it to revert to its normal form. The 11-eyed golem then summoned a hammer and repelled Nagumo, but Yuyuhi quickly charged in and kicked it toward Hina, giving her an opening to deliver another blow. However, even that wasn't enough. At this point, Hayu finally stepped in. He asked the 11-eyed golem what it had been doing during the past 10 days, and it replied that it had been reading books. Hayu speculated that after each transformation, it needed time to recover, and he confidently declared that he had uncovered the true nature of mud puppets. Hayu summoned 3 puppets at once, which excited the 11-eyed golem. However, it was quickly overpowered, restrained, and captured by the trio of puppets. Before it shattered, the 11-eyed golem asked about its true nature and the essence of mud puppets. Hayu explained that mud puppets weren't merely disposable tools, but rather reflections of their creators' hearts. He believed that the 11-eyed golem's love for reading reflected Animus' deep desire for knowledge. Satisfied with this answer, the 11-eyed golem bid farewell before crumbling along with Hugh's puppets. Animus also retreated. The two girls resolved to focus on perfecting a combined technique capable of completely defeating the upcoming 12-eyed golem. Yuyuhi told everyone to look to the sky, where they noticed another shadow, a weapon created by Anima to counter the hammer. In the following days, the knights worked tirelessly to figure out how to merge their abilities. However, fully controlling a combined power remained a significant challenge. By evening, Teiyu accidentally encountered Animus, who expressed regret for the 11-eyed golem as it closely resembled him. The story then shifted to the time when Animus and Anima were children. The two of them had suffered a tragedy that caused them to lose their family. They lived together in a research facility where the head of the institute grew fond of them and even planned to adopt them if they agreed. It was later revealed that the disaster that had befallen them was actually caused by Animus himself using his powers. Animus had believed his abilities were extraordinary and could be used to bring destruction. However, Anima stopped him, reminding him that they were both just humans. Anima wished to seal their powers permanently to live a peaceful life. She believed Animus could become a scholar due to his love of reading. Animus considered this until the next day when the head of the institute learned about their powers. The head encouraged Animus to use his abilities for research purposes instead of sealing them away. Animus was completely convinced by the head and began to delude himself into thinking he was a god. He created a hammer using his powers and destroyed the research facility. He then went on to shatter the entire world. Unexpectedly, the space around them cracked, causing both Animus and Anima to time travel to the present. Animus intended to destroy the world again, but Anima stopped him just in time. She pulled Animus down to Earth and proposed a game. However, Anima repeatedly failed, leading to the Earth being destroyed over and over again. More than 100 years passed until Anima met Hina. At that time, Hina didn't understand who Anima was or what her purpose was. Anima tried to strike a deal with Hina by granting her a wish, but Hina didn't know what to wish for. As a result, Anima followed Hina and observed her. One day, while Hina's mother and Hisame were away, Hina decided to go out and play with Anima. During their outing, they encountered a fierce dog, and Yuyuhi found them. This marked the first meeting between Yuyuhi and Hina. At the time, Yuyuhi thought Hina was a lost child and intended to take her to the police station, as he still believed in the police because his father worked there. However, Hina thought of herself as a bad child who would be arrested by the police and ran away. When Anima followed her, Yuyuhi saw her and accused her of being a child kidnapper. He threw a water balloon at her and pulled Hina away. Yuyuhi explained to Hina that the police weren't bad and shared his dream of becoming a police officer like his father. Anima caught up with them and revealed herself as Hina's guardian. She then made Hina float into the air and teleported away, leaving Yuyuhi to think it was all a dream. Later, Hina heard about Anima's 7-year plan and decided to wish to meet Yuyuhi again someday, which ultimately drew him into this ordeal with everyone else. Back in the present, the group of knights had been training hard for 2 weeks to combine their abilities, but there was still no sign of the 12-eyed golem. Animus appeared and informed them that they were free to do whatever they wanted for the next month. However, when the month ended, his 12-eyed golem and hammer would completely destroy the world along with Anima's weapon. Time sped forward, and the fateful day finally arrived. That night, Animus invaded everyone's dreams and summoned them to a specific location to be transported to the final battlefield. Each member of the knights prepared themselves and took care of personal matters before the gathering. Soon after, they all assembled at their usual meeting spot. Everyone was ready. Animus unexpectedly appeared to greet them briefly before teleporting all the knights away, leaving only Anima and Hina behind. Animus transported the knights to a remote countryside location, but realized he had accidentally left one person behind. He quickly left, allowing the knights some privacy. Yuyuhi wondered what would become of their group after the battle. Noi replied that regardless of whether they won or lost, the knights would have to part ways once the battle was over. The 12-eyed golem then emerged from behind the mountain, its size far greater than ever before. However, its massive size also made it easier to target. The group unleashed their combined technique, which had taken them over a month to master. A destructive beam of light was fired, severing one of the golem's arms. They needed to prepare another strike, but it was unlikely the golem would give them the chance. Suddenly, Hina descended from the sky and delivered a powerful punch, toppling the golem. Hayu separated from the group to assist Hina, buying time for the others to charge up another attack. He summoned a new golem in the form of the Black Cat Knight. At that moment, Nagumo realized that the future was being shaped by 2 children, and he reflected on how arrogant he had been to think that fighting was solely the responsibility of adults. Together, they managed to unleash a second beam of light, instantly destroying the upper half of the golem. The group noticed a village in the area where the golem had fallen, but Anima explained that it was merely an island created by Animus, with no real inhabitants. Animus then decided to activate his hammer, prompting Anima to send Yuyuhi into the weapon stationed in outer space. She explained that Yuyuhi had a connection to both her and Hina, and since neither of them had enough strength left to operate the weapon, Yuyuhi had to take on that responsibility. He needed to venture deep inside and unify the fragments of his soul to control it. Trust, she said, would guide his path. As Yuyuhi placed his trust in the process, pathways formed before him, leading him forward. He soon reached the first soul fragment, which represented the moment he had lost faith in humanity. Upon grasping it, the fragment transformed into chains that had long bound him. Carrying the chains, Yuyuhi moved to the second fragment, which immediately transformed into a spear. This fragment symbolized the moment he gained Hangetsu's power. The third fragment, representing a moment in the future, transformed into a cloak that brought Yuyuhi to the weapon's activation switch. He quickly activated the weapon, which successfully blocked the hammer's attack. However, the shield soon shattered, and the colossal weapon was destroyed as well. At that point, Hina stepped forward to take action. She ascended and used fragments from Anima's weapon to create a golem in her own image. The golem delivered a powerful punch, destroying the hammer and absorbing its fragments to grow larger. Animus was shocked, as it was the first time his hammer had been destroyed. However, he was not deterred and remained intent on destroying Earth. He then transported the knights into the sky, causing them to plummet. The group mimicked Yuyuhi's technique, generating energy beneath their feet to slow their fall. Mikazuki suddenly leapt forward and kicked Animus in the head. Animus quickly recovered, creating orbs to attack the knights. Anima noticed that Animus had erected a barrier around the island. She realized that he was being cautious of Hina's power and instructed Hina to occasionally stomp on the barrier. The sound distracted Animus, and Anima knew that fear could weaken his strength. As Hina disrupted Animus, Nagumo dove from above to attack him. Animus switched places with Hanako, forcing Yako to pull Hanako to safety. The two girls then seized Animus and attacked him, forcing him to reveal another ability, regeneration. Mikazuki rushed in to shield the girls from Animus' counterattack. Hina continued to stomp on the barrier, further unsettling Animus. Hugh's cat even added to the disruption by stomping on him. However, Animus managed to escape and focused his attacks on Mikazuki. The two girls created a shield to protect Mikazuki, but Animus also targeted them, forcing Hayu to join in defending Mikazuki. The two girls launched an attack on Animus to prevent him from continuing his assault. Animus decided to reclaim Tayu's power, but Tayu used his wish to stop Animus from regaining his strength and to heal the group. Realizing Tayu had turned against him, Animus showed no mercy. He used his hammer to destroy Hugh's cat golem. Animus suddenly transformed into a dark shadow, radiating an intensely terrifying aura. Hina, realizing she couldn't remain outside the barrier any longer, launched continuous attacks to break through it. Animus retaliated by hurling his hammer, engulfing the knights in smoke and dust. Using the cover of the smoke, he launched a surprise attack, but Yako dispelled the smoke with her technique. Tayu attempted to use his power to heal the group, but Animus targeted him, prompting Hanako and Mikazuki to intervene. Animus then unleashed another attack aimed at the entire group. Tayu continued to heal them, but his strength waned with each use. Animus threw his hammer at Hayu, who managed to summon a golem in time to block it. However, Animus deduced that Hayu had reached his limit on how many golems he could create, and that Tayu, being just a child, wouldn't be able to sustain the group much longer. But Nagumo firmly declared that there were no children here, only warriors, and that the only child present was Animus himself. At that moment, Hina succeeded in breaking the barrier and entered. Sensing danger, Animus resolved to eliminate the knights in a single strike. Hanako froze one of his arms, while Hayu and the two children defended the group to keep them safe. The Unicorn Knight, for the first time, allowed Nagumo to ride it, enabling him to close in and kick Animus away. Animus was stunned by his defeat, unable to comprehend how he had lost. As he searched for the reason, he realized it was because of Hina. But before he could act further, Anima, carrying Yuyuhi's weapon, struck Animus, impaling him. In his final moments, Animus acknowledged his mortality, that he was human and not divine. Anima expressed hope that if Animus still wished to understand more about the universe, he might reincarnate in another life to continue his quest. As Animus passed, Anima wept, regretting that she hadn't been able to stop him sooner. She explained that the island wouldn't disappear because Hina was sustaining it. With Animus gone, the conflict now shifted to the group and Hina. Hina and Yuyuhi then revealed their original plan, to destroy the Earth. Hina controlled her massive golem, while Yuyuhi prepared to hold off the knights. Yuyuhi swiftly attacked, knocking Nagumo and Yako aside, and even incapacitated Hayu, who posed the greatest threat. Yuyuhi declared that anyone wanting to stop Hina would have to go through him. Hanako decided to leave to resolve something, while the two girls stayed near Mikazuki to ensure he didn't recklessly join the fight despite his injuries. Yuyuhi now faced only the two legendary beast knights. He charged at Nagumo, sending him flying into Yako. Yuyuhi criticized them for only training to fight mud golems, not humans. Nagumo, however, resolved to fight Yuyuhi at full strength, even if it meant breaking a few of his bones, as it was the duty of adults to teach the younger generation. Yuyuhi, in turn, expressed his gratitude and asked Nagumo not to hold back. Meanwhile, Hanako retrieved water in an attempt to trap Yuyuhi, but he dodged her efforts. Yako tried creating more restraints, managing to douse Yuyuhi with water, but Hanako lacked the strength to freeze it. Mikazuki worked to awaken Taiyu so he could heal himself, but in the chaos, Yuyuhi inadvertently flipped Yako's skirt, enraging her into attacking him with her full strength. Yuyuhi narrowly avoided her strike. Taking the opportunity, Yuyuhi confessed that he couldn't return Yako's feelings because he was in love with Hina and wanted to be the one to stop her. Hina had already anticipated this turn of events. She joined the battle, reminiscing about her moments with Yuyuhi. She recalled a previous birthday when she first mentioned her illness to him and how she couldn't live without anima. When she learned that Yuyuhi had inherited Hangetsu's power, she knew this confrontation was inevitable. Hina recognized that Yuyuhi was becoming more optimistic and content with life, and while she was happy to have new friends, she wished time would stand still so she could savor these moments longer. Time continued to pass relentlessly. Yako once shared that she knew someone who had suffered greatly after losing a loved one but eventually found happiness in life again, proving that those who deserve happiness will ultimately receive what they are destined for. Slowly, Hina began to realize that Yuyuhi had moved forward with everyone else, leaving her behind. Hina believed that everyone would find happiness in a place where she did not exist. Awakening suddenly, Hina found herself having struck Yuyuhi, sending him flying. He managed to grab hold of his weapon and cloak, which then unexpectedly vanished, transforming into the power for Noi to evolve. Noi became a legendary knight, and Yuyuhi believed he now had enough strength to stand on equal footing with Hina. At this point, Anima revealed to the group Hina's illness, an incurable disease that left her with no dreams for the future, cherishing only the present. When Anima had taken her into space, Hina had been captivated by Earth and believed that if she destroyed it, Earth would belong to her. Over time, however, she realized that Earth had taught her how to love. With this realization, Hina's perspective on her illness shifted. She concluded that regardless of whether the world was destroyed or not, she could no longer continue with everyone. For this reason, she wanted Yuyuhi to be the one to stop her. The knights wanted to help Hina, but Anima said that what they could do depended entirely on them. Determined, the group decided to support Yuyuhi in any way they could. Hina began ascending into the sky to destroy Earth. Yuyuhi leaped after her but couldn't reach. At that critical moment, everyone joined forces to help him, sharing the burden with Yuyuhi. Taiyu, who had awakened, healed Mikazuki, giving him the strength to assist Yuyuhi in finally reaching Hina. Yuyuhi declared that if Hina's time were to stop, he would stay by her side until the very end and even depart this world with her if necessary. However, Hina didn't want Yuyuhi to sacrifice himself for her because she loved him more than she loved Earth. Yuyuhi brought Hina back down, and as she prepared to apologize, the group spoke first, welcoming her back. Hina broke into tears, thanking and apologizing to everyone. Anima then transported them all back as the island began to crumble, and Hina's weapon started to disintegrate. Their battle had ended. Anima bowed deeply, apologizing for the trouble caused by her personal conflict and the losses they had endured. Hina's powers faded, and Anima summoned the departed knights once more. One by one, they bid farewell to their knights. When it was Yuyuhi and Mikazuki's turn, they asked Anima for one final request. Understanding their wishes, Anima granted them the ability to use their powers one last time for a grand showdown. Anima expressed hope that Hina would see a brighter future before departing with the Beast Knights into the cycle of reincarnation. Meanwhile, Yuyuhi and Mikazuki engaged in an intense battle, fighting tirelessly until nightfall, with several onlookers falling asleep. Unexpectedly, a meteor shower appeared, fragments of Hina's weapon falling to earth. After fighting for a while longer, their powers suddenly vanished. Noi began to cry, praising Yuyuhi as a strong and admirable warrior and expressing how honored he was to have fought alongside him all this time. Yuyuhi was equally moved, saddened by the farewell with his old friend. Mikazuki's raven spoke one last time, commending Mikazuki for his selflessness, even sacrificing his life for something as simple as bread for others and wishing for his victory. The two continued to fight until they were too exhausted and resorted to verbal sparring. Finally, they decided to end the match with one last punch. However, Mikazuki cheated, landing a kick that knocked Yuyuhi out. Although underhanded, Mikazuki took pride in his victory. The knights were finally able to leave, and everyone returned home. Hina resolved to fight her illness and survive. When Yuyuhi returned to his room, he couldn't help but miss Noi. 10 years later, Yuyuhi was suddenly called back by the anima of 10 years prior to wield his weapon once more in preparation for the collection of Yuyuhi's soul in the final battle. Yuyuhi also wondered about the origins of the 12 legendary beast knights. Essentially, they were the images Anima and Animus had seen on the moon. Anima explained that she and Animus actually came from the 32nd century and were descendants of Hangetsu and Hisame. Since Hangetsu had passed away, both she and Animus would no longer be born. Yuyuhi felt happy knowing there was a future where Hangetsu and Hisame could be happy. Anima then asked how Yuyuhi was doing in the present. 10 years later, Yuyuhi had become an inspector. His former assistant, who worked with Nagumo, had pushed work onto him, so Yuyuhi had to go to Nagumo for help. Subaru, now working as Nagumo's assistant, was with Mikazuki, who still pursued a job capturing criminals and punishing them before the police arrived to deal with them. It seemed Subaru and Mikazuki were dating. Taiyu and Hanako had opened a noodle shop, while Hayu and Yako had been married for a year. Hayu was now a university lecturer and Taiyu's teacher, while Yako stayed home as a housewife. Machai had become a teacher, and she and Taiyu were also dating. As for Hina, after 8 years of battling her illness, she had fully recovered 2 years ago after undergoing surgery performed by her own mother. She had spent 2 years in France for treatment, and today she was returning. Anima was overjoyed to see everyone happy and promised to help connect the current timeline with Yuyuhi's to ensure everything would go smoothly. Yuyuhi went to pick up Hina and her sister. Hina, now confident in her health, declared that she would compete in the Olympics and win as many gold medals as she could. Yuyuhi then took Hina to meet everyone for a celebration. Nagumo would foot the bill, as he had wished for a lottery win 10 years ago. Hina gave everyone dolls representing the legendary beast knights that she had made over the years. And so, the story of their year-long battle came to an end. Now, they had all grown and were living their own lives. The film closed with their journeys complete.